We have all experienced that critical moment when it seems there is no more room to think or breathe. Our heart races, our blood boils, and in the blink of an eye, a harsh word escapes without control, causing sometimes irreparable damage. The truth is that in conflict situations, we often forget that we have a choice. We forget that between the external stimulus and our reaction, there is a valuable space, a space capable of changing everything. Imagine for a moment that you are in the middle of a heated argument at work or at home. The tension in the air is almost palpable. Instead of immediately jumping into an impulsive response, you do something unexpected. You take a deep breath and emotionally remove yourself from the situation for a moment. This simple gesture may seem small, but it carries within it an ancient wisdom that many still ignore. Before we continue, check if you are already subscribed to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss any videos that can transform your life. This is exactly the point that we will explore in depth throughout this video, guided by the wisdom of the legendary samurai Miyamoto Musashi. Far beyond swords and battles, Musashi left a legacy on how to win the most complex battle of all, the one we fight internally in moments of tension and conflict. You may not carry a sword or fight physical battles, but you face emotional conflicts that are just as intense every day, whether at work, with your family, or with strangers on the street. The way you react can define the course of your relationships and even your inner peace. That's why today we're going to learn how to identify and take advantage of that brief space between stimulus and reaction, a powerful moment where calm, clarity, and true strength reside. Miyamoto Musashi understood something profound and essential. Mastering an opponent begins with mastering yourself, and mastering yourself requires control over your most instinctive emotions, especially in situations where you are challenged to the extreme. Throughout this video, you will clearly understand how to use Musashi's teachings to transform your reaction to chaos into a balanced and conscious response. So before we go any further, ask yourself this question honestly. Next time tension builds, will you continue to give in to your impulses, or will you make a conscious choice to be calm and self-controlled? Let's discover together how to make this choice possible and natural, starting with the understanding that your mind is, in reality, your true sword. If this content has made sense to you so far, please leave a like. This will help us get this message across to more people who need to find their calm amidst the chaos. Miyamoto Musashi is one of the most legendary figures in Japanese history. An undefeated warrior in more than 60 deadly duels, he was known not only for his technical skill, but for his strategic and silent mind, capable of seeing far beyond the blade. For Musashi, winning a duel was about more than strength or technique. It was about overpowering your opponent before he even raised his sword. Musashi was born in 1584 in a Japan marked by wars and power struggles. From a young age, he developed an unshakable stance in the face of danger. In his most famous work, The Book of Five Rings, he reveals not only combat tactics, but also profound philosophies on how to deal with the world and with oneself. In his writings, it is clear that true victory begins in the mind. He believed that the warrior who wins first within himself will never be defeated by anyone. This transformed the conflict into something much more than a physical clash. It was an internal struggle against fear, anger, and illusion. Musashi saw combat as a field of clarity. The warrior who enters a duel with a troubled heart, a distracted mind, or an inflamed ego is doomed to defeat. On the other hand, the one who enters with serenity, emotional mastery, and firm purpose becomes virtually invincible, not because he never makes mistakes, but because he never lets himself be shaken. This mindset is exactly what we can apply to everyday conflicts. Although our battles today rarely involve swords, they still require precision, focus, and emotional control. Instead of steel, we use words. Instead of armor, we protect ourselves with actions. And even without sabers, we can easily hurt or be hurt when we act without conscience. Therefore, understanding that the mind is the true sword puts us in an advantageous position in any confrontation. Before thinking about winning an argument or proving a point, we need to master our inner self. When we achieve this, everything changes: the way we speak, react, and even what we choose to confront. This philosophy leads us to a powerful conclusion. The real conflict is not against the other. It is against losing one's own temper. And the first step to overcoming it begins with observation. We live in an era where everything pushes us to speed up. Responses need to be immediate, judgments need to be instantaneous, and patience seems to have become an increasingly rare virtue. Social media, rapid messages, short deadlines, everything stimulates our minds to function in constant reaction mode. But it is precisely in this accelerated pace that one of the greatest dangers of our time lies: emotional reactivity. How many times have you responded in the heat of the moment and regretted it later? How many decisions have you made out of anger, frustration, or fear, only to realize hours later that a calmer choice would have changed everything? Impulsivity has become a silent but deeply destructive problem, whether in relationships, professional environments, or even in the way we treat ourselves. And the scary thing is that we often don't even realize we're being reactive. Our minds have been conditioned to respond before we think, as if it's dangerous to appear slow or hesitant. This puts us in a constant state of alert, as if we're always ready for an attack, even when there's no real threat. This is where Musashi's teachings become more relevant than ever. Because while the modern world values speed, Musashi valued precision and clarity. He knew that a poorly timed strike was worse than no strike at all. And this applies perfectly to how we deal with our internal and external conflicts today. Emotional reactivity isn't just a behavioral flaw, it's a misalignment between emotion and reason. When we act impulsively, it's like we're handing our sword over to the enemy. We lose control of the situation and let the other person or the context dictate our actions. Furthermore, this constant reactivity causes deep emotional wear and tear. The body lives in a state of tension, the heart carries the weight of regret, and the mind becomes a battlefield for old battles, relived on a loop. In the long term, this affects not only our mental health, but also the quality of our relationships and our lives as a whole. But there is a way out. The first step is to recognize this pattern. Understand that the speed of a response does not define its strength, but rather its origin. When an action is born from awareness, presence, and calm, it has a much deeper and more positive impact. Musashi was invincible, not because he attacked with fury, but because he knew exactly when and how to act. Therefore, to win modern conflicts, we need a mind that is not swept away by the turmoil. We need to cultivate the space between what we feel and what we do. This space is the real battlefield, and whoever masters it wins. And that is precisely why, in the next chapter, we will learn about the first essential principle of Musashi's path: neutral observation, the mental state that allows you to see everything clearly before reacting. A teaching that can definitively change the way you see the world. At the heart of Musashi's philosophy was the concept of fudoshin, which can be translated as imperturbable mind. This principle represents the ability to maintain inner stability even in the face of external chaos. For Musashi, this was the basis of any effective combat. No matter how intense the duel, his mind remained serene, like the surface of a calm lake. Neutral observation is the first concrete step towards achieving this state. It involves the ability to see the situation as it is, without being immediately swept away by emotions. It sounds simple, but it requires practice and awareness. When we are faced with a conflict, our automatic tendency is to position ourselves emotionally. We feel angry, defensive, frustrated. This clouds our vision and prevents us from acting wisely. Musashi trained this clarity in every detail. He observed the opponent's smallest movements, the hidden intentions in his gestures, the environment around him. But he did not do it in a hurry. He did it with presence. And this same attitude can be applied to conflicts in modern life. Let's look at a practical example. Imagine someone unfairly accuses you in public. Your immediate impulse is to defend yourself angrily or try to counterattack to restore your image. But what if instead you apply neutral observation? You stop, you breathe, you observe not only the person but also yourself. You notice the tension in your body, the words that come to mind, the urge to retaliate, and just observe. In this space, you distance yourself emotionally from the conflict and create space to respond instead of reacting. The untroubled mind is not cold or indifferent. It simply knows that acting under emotional pressure often brings bad results. The goal here is not to suppress emotions, but to allow them to pass without overpowering your actions. It's like being in the eye of a storm but holding firm, knowing that the cloud will pass. In practice, you can practice this with simple exercises. One of the most powerful is conscious breathing. When you notice a conflict forming, pause and take 3 slow, deep breaths before speaking or acting. This short break reduces the impact of adrenaline and activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for conscious decisions. Another useful exercise is active listening. Instead of preparing a response while the other person is speaking, you take the time to truly listen. This broadens your perception and reduces emotional noise. Remember, observing is more than just seeing. It's understanding without judgment. Musashi also said, "The path of strategy begins with observation." And that is why this principle is the starting point. Without it, all other teachings are lost in the heat of the moment. But with it, you begin to build an invisible shield that protects you from the emotional onslaughts of the outside world. As you develop this ability, you'll realize something transformative. Many conflicts don't even deserve an immediate response. Others, when seen clearly, dissolve on their own. Neutral observation changes not only how you react, but what you choose to react to. And when the mind becomes firm like a mountain in the face of chaos, life begins to follow a new rhythm. A rhythm where you lead your emotions and not the other way around. Now that you understand the importance of an undisturbed mind, it is time to move on to the second principle, self-knowledge as a tool for inner mastery. Because before overcoming any external conflict, you need to know and understand what moves within you. Musashi taught that before understanding the enemy, one must know oneself. This idea, although repeated in various philosophical traditions, gains unique depth when viewed from the perspective of combat. For Musashi, the truly fatal error in a duel came not from the opponent's weakness, but from ignorance of oneself. And this truth is even more applicable to everyday conflicts. Many of our impulsive reactions are not born from the situation itself, but from the emotional triggers we carry, unresolved memories, old beliefs, deep-rooted insecurities. When someone criticizes us, for example, we are not just listening to that criticism. We are, without realizing it, activating memories of other times when we were invalidated, rejected, or judged. And that is what makes us react so strongly. Self-knowledge is therefore the second fundamental principle for staying calm in any conflict. It involves learning to recognize these internal triggers, these sensitive areas that make us lose our center. Because as long as they remain unconscious, they will continue to control us. Musashi spent long periods in retreat, observing himself, meditating, writing about his own mind. He knew that without this deep dive, his actions on the battlefield would be mere reactions. And it is this distinction between conscious action and automatic reaction that defines a true warrior. But how do you start cultivating this self-awareness? One of the most effective ways is through intentional self-observation. This means, for example, setting aside a few minutes at the end of the day to reflect on situations in which you lost control or felt affected. What exactly happened? What did you feel? And most importantly, where did this emotion come from? Often the origin is not in the present moment, but in deeper layers of our personal history. Another powerful practice is emotional journaling, done through writing, keeping a diary of your emotions, where you can name what you feel and reflect on the causes, helps you build an increasingly sharp awareness of yourself. Musashi made frequent notes, not only about techniques, but about his conduct, his mistakes, and his learnings. He treated himself as a project in constant evolution. And then there is the power of silence. In a world full of noise, being silent for a few minutes every day, just to listen to what is going on inside, is a revolutionary act. In silence, many truths come to light, some uncomfortable, others liberating, but all necessary. When you start to get to know yourself in depth, something changes in the way you face conflicts. External provocations lose their strength because you can recognize emotions before they take over you completely. What would have been an outburst before is now just a sign of something to be observed. What was once an open wound is now a point of attention in the process of healing. And this process of self-knowledge is continuous. It never ends, But with each step, it brings more clarity, more mastery, more freedom. Because those who truly know themselves become impossible to be manipulated by circumstances. Now stop for a moment and think. Can you identify your most common triggers? Do you know which situations throw you off balance and why? Leave a comment. Your sharing may help other people see themselves as well. In the next chapter, we will explore how to train your mind daily with the same dedication. As a warrior training his sword, to transform self-control into a natural skill, accessible in any moment of tension. If there was one thing Musashi took seriously, it was training. He believed that excellence came not from inspiration or innate talent, but from conscious repetition. Just as a warrior sharpens his sword every day, developing the mind also requires discipline. Self-control is not a gift, it is practice. Many people believe that remaining calm in the midst of chaos is a natural ability of a lucky few. They think that they are born with a short fuse and that this cannot be changed. But Musashi shows us that this belief is a myth. The mind, like the body, can be trained, strengthened, and refined. The secret lies in consistency. Training the mind is, above all, developing presence. It is being here, now, without being dragged by past memories or future projections. When you are present, the world slows down. The words of others lose their threatening tone. Thoughts stop running wild. Everything becomes clearer. There are many ways to cultivate this presence. Meditation is one of them, simple yet powerful. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just 5 minutes a day of sitting in silence, observing your breath, letting your thoughts come and go without following them. It is in this space between one thought and another that inner mastery begins to emerge. Another effective exercise is strategic visualization. Musashi visualized battles before experiencing them. He anticipated moves, studied possibilities, and adjusted his mental posture before any confrontation. We can do the same, in an adapted way. Mentally imagine challenging situations that tend to throw us off balance, and internally rehearse a calmer, more conscious response. The more times this scene is practiced in the mind, the greater the chance of applying it in real life. Additionally, it's important to develop what we call conscious automatic responses. Instead of reacting on impulse, you train your mind to respond calmly by default. This is done with repetition and intention. For example, whenever you feel anger rising, instead of yelling or snapping back, you can train a default response, such as taking a deep breath, getting up and walking away for a few minutes, or simply remaining silent. This repeated action will over time become automatic. Musashi also valued continuous improvement. He did not consider himself a master, despite his victories. He was always seeking to improve, to learn, to observe. This spirit of continuous learning is essential in mental training. It is not about achieving a perfect state of self-control, but about making progress every day, even if only a little. A conflict overcome internally, a word wisely restrained, a moment when silence was chosen over attack. All these count as progress. It is also necessary to pay attention to the body. Musashi believed that the mind and body were one. Therefore, taking care of your physical health through diet, sleep, and movement also strengthens your mind. An unbalanced body is fertile ground for uncontrolled emotional reactions. A balanced body provides the basis for serenity to flourish. Over time, you will notice something transformative. Situations continue to be challenging. Conflicts continue to exist, but you react differently. What used to provoke anger now arouses compassion. What used to be an affront becomes just a sign that the other person is suffering. This is the result of constant training, a sharp, clear, and serene mind. And the most interesting thing is that this type of training does not require major external changes. You don't need a Zen temple, free time, or a completely different routine. You just need to decide to practice a little bit each day with focus and intention. Small conscious actions repeated daily create a new mental pattern. Musashi mastered the art of the sword, but before that, he mastered himself. And we, with the tools of the present, can follow the same path. Because a trained mind is worth 1,000 well-spoken words, and in the midst of chaos, it is this mind that determines who we are. In the next chapter, we will apply all these principles to the most common situations in our daily lives. It is time to see how Musashi's wisdom works in practice, in the real conflicts we face every day. Now that you know the three central principles of emotional mastery, neutral observation, self-knowledge, and mental training, it's time to apply them to real-world situations and everyday conflicts. After all, wisdom can only be proven when it is applied. And as Musashi said, knowledge is not enough. You have to live by practice. Let's start with one of the most common situations, a workplace argument. Imagine that you receive public criticism from your superior. Your immediate instinct might be to justify yourself, retaliate, or harbor resentment. But if you practice neutral observation, the first step is to take a breath, keep your mind steady, and observe the scene as a whole. Instead of reacting, you listen. Then, you apply self-awareness. You recognize that the discomfort does not come only from the criticism itself, but from hurt pride or the fear of appearing incompetent. Finally, you activate your mental training and choose a more balanced response, perhaps calmly saying that you would like to talk in private to better understand the feedback. A situation that could escalate becomes a bridge to mutual respect. Another common scenario, family conflicts. These are often the most challenging because they involve deep bonds and old stories. Suppose someone in your family constantly repeats attitudes that irritate you. The tendency is to accumulate frustration until it explodes. But with Musashi's principles, you act differently. First, you observe the emotion arising without identifying with it. Then, you reflect, why does this affect me so much? Is there something unresolved here? Finally, instead of arguing, you choose to talk with empathy at a more appropriate time, seeking to understand the other person as well. The sword has been put away, but the clarity remains. In conflicts with strangers, such as in traffic, in lines, or on social media, the impulse is to react quickly, as if we need to prove something. In these moments, remembering Fudoshin, the imperturbable mind, is essential. External provocation only gains strength if it finds internal resonance. But if your mind is trained, the offense passes through you like the wind through the trees. You continue on your way, intact. These examples show that Musashi's principles are absolutely relevant today. We live in times where the slightest stimulus can turn into confrontation, where anxiety is fueled by constant stimuli. But the wisdom of the samurai offers an alternative: to live with awareness, respond with clarity, and cultivate the quiet strength of self-control. It is important to remember that applying these principles does not mean becoming passive or inactive. Quite the opposite. Sometimes, the most firm response is precisely the calmest one. When you respond clearly and purposefully, without getting caught up in the chaos of others, your presence naturally asserts itself. People begin to respect you not because of the tone of your voice, but because of the coherence of your actions. Practicing these principles daily transforms your attitude toward the world. You stop being someone who lives reacting and become someone who chooses how to live. It is a profound change that brings more serenity, more emotional stability, and more relational intelligence. And the beautiful thing about all this is that you don't have to be perfect to get started. Just apply one principle at a time, one situation a day. Every time you choose to observe instead of react, to know yourself instead of judging, to train instead of repeating patterns, you are building a strong, lucid and wise mind. In the next and final chapter, we will conclude this journey with a reflection on what winning really means and why the greatest victory of all is not outside, but inside you. Throughout this journey, we have explored three fundamental pillars taught by Miyamoto Musashi: neutral observation, self-knowledge, and mental training. We have seen how these ancient principles, which came from the battlefields of feudal Japan, remain more alive than ever in the emotional battles we face every day. But now it is time to go a step further and reflect on what it really means to win. For many, victory is still synonymous with overcoming others, being stronger, faster, more convincing. But Musashi understood that true victory was more subtle, more profound, and infinitely more challenging: overcoming oneself. Overcoming yourself means choosing silence when pride screams. It means containing anger when provocation seems to demand revenge. It means maintaining clarity when everything around you is in turmoil. This victory is not seen in trophies or celebrated in public, but it changes your entire life from the inside. Musashi said, He who conquers himself is truly invincible. And this phrase carries an almost immeasurable wisdom, because conquering yourself is not a goal with a finish line. It is a journey. It is waking up every day with the willingness to do a little better than yesterday, to breathe more deeply, to observe with more presence, to react with more awareness. This type of victory has a silent but powerful effect on everything around you. Relationships become healthier, conflicts lose intensity, decisions become more balanced, and most importantly, you feel more whole, more stable, and more in control of yourself. Mastering yourself is the true path to freedom, because when you are no longer chained by your own impulses, no one else has the power to control you. Not the aggressor, not the critic, not the circumstances. You act because you choose to act, not because you were dragged into it by something that came from outside. And if you've come this far, it's because, at some level, you're already on that path. There's already a desire within you to be greater than your own impulses, more lucid than your own emotions. Honor that, keep going. Don't demand perfection from yourself, but practice with intention, every day, because that's what builds an unshakable spirit. Remember, the world will continue to be challenging. People will continue to test you. Difficult situations will arise, but now you carry tools. You carry the wisdom of one of the greatest strategists who ever lived. And more than that, you carry the ability to apply it to your own life. If this message resonated with you and you feel you are ready to live with more presence, more calm, and more inner mastery, subscribe to the channel right now. Together, we will continue exploring paths of wisdom and transformation so that you can live with more balance and personal power. Thank you for following me this far. May Musashi's teachings serve as a constant reminder that the true warrior is not the one who conquers the outside world, but the one who rules his own inner world. And whenever chaos knocks on your door, remember, calm is your sharpest sword. Use it wisely.